If you're watching parents, friends, or, well, maybe even thinking about your own future, you know this challenge we're all facing globally. Populations are aging fast, and keeping people mentally healthy, fighting off loneliness, that's becoming a really central task for society. And for millions of women especially, there's this specific thing, this psychological shift. People call it the empty nest phenomenon. It often leads to more depression, more loneliness. It happens everywhere, but the data we're digging into today really zooms in on China, particularly in cities where it seems especially intense. But here's where it gets really fascinating. What if a powerful solution wasn't, another pill or some super intensive therapy, but, well, basically a giant, joyful outdoor dance party? Seriously. We're doing a deep dive today into a brand new 2024 study from Scientific Reports. It looked at over 2,300 middle-aged and older women, and it explored exactly that, this activity-based approach they call square dancing in China, or Guancheng Wu.
Yeah, that's exactly our mission for this deep dive. We're not just going to describe it. We want to get under the hood. Look at the psychological gears turning. The real focus is how this incredibly popular communal dance acts like a shortcut. Not just for getting physically fit, obviously, but specifically for boosting mental well-being. It seems to kick off this really crucial chain reaction involving resilience, feeling good about life, and just, well, positive emotions. We want to unpack that sequence.
And what's kind of brilliant about it is how accessible it is, right? We're talking moderate intensity. It mixes movement, social time, which is vital, and cultural expression. You don't need fancy gear, no gym pass. People just do it spontaneously in parks, plazas, often with loud rhythmic music. It's totally built for community. And it pulls from all sorts of styles, traditional Chinese, folk, modern, even like Latin dance moves sometimes. Okay, so let's get into the evidence. What actually convinced the researchers this wasn't just, people having a good time by chance? The study basically asked, does doing this square dancing regularly actually make these women measurably feel better across some key psychological areas?
Exactly. So they surveyed 2,311 women, and they used these standard validated questionnaires, tools to measure physical activity, how well they bounce back from stress resilience, their general mood, and how satisfied they felt with life overall. And what jumps out immediately is how much better the square dancing group did compared to the control group. So these were women of a similar age, but who weren't doing this activity regularly. The first look at the numbers, just comparing the groups, showed these huge statistical differences, pretty much everywhere they looked.
Okay, huge differences. Let's put some specifics on that without getting too bogged down in stats talk. What was the biggest difference they noticed?
Well, the leap in overall life satisfaction was probably the most striking. The average score for the dancers was way higher than the group not participating. We're talking a difference of about 10 points on the scale they used, which in this kind of research is a massive difference. It really signals a substantial boost in how people see their own well-being. It's definitely a leap, like you said, not just a small step.
Wow, okay. 10 points difference. You
Yeah.
really can't just brush that aside. It suggests doing this activity really moves the needle on just basic life happiness.
Precisely. And that pattern, it just held up across the other mental health markers too. The women dancing scored significantly higher on psychological resilience. That's that inner ability to cope, adapt, bounce back when things get tough. And their positive affect scores, which measure things like feeling enthusiastic, energetic, engaged, those were also clearly higher than the comparison group. So yeah, these initial findings laid the groundwork. Square dancing isn't just moving your body. It's strongly linked to feeling happier, tougher mentally, and more satisfied. But importantly, the researchers didn't just stop there. They wanted to know why. What's the mechanism?
Right, and this is where we get to that aha moment. You mentioned the how. If square dancing goes in and positive feelings come out, what's happening in between? Maybe quickly define the three key psychological bits they looked at.
Sure. So first, there's positive affect. These are emotions like, joy, interest, contentment. And we know from psychology, like Barbara Fredrickson's broaden and build idea, that these feelings aren't just nice to have. They actually help us build up resources like social connections or better problem-solving skills. They kind of make us more capable. Second is psychological resilience. This is super important because, as the research shows, it's something you can actually change, you can improve it. It's like your mental shock absorber for dealing with things like the empty nest situation or just the health stuff that comes with getting older. And third, life satisfaction, which is basically your own judgment of how your life measures up against what you expect or want it to be.
Okay, got it. Positive feelings, resilience, life satisfaction. Makes sense. But the really interesting part you said is that the study found square dancing doesn't just go straight from activity to happiness. it takes this like detour through a three-stage process. Why? Why isn't just enjoying the dancing enough? Let's unpack that chain.
This really is the core finding. When they analyzed the connections using statistical modeling, they found the strongest, most significant pathway wasn't direct. It was this specific chain. Square dance exercise leads to psychological resilience, which then leads to life satisfaction, which finally leads to positive effect.
Huh. That's really interesting. So the actual like fun of dancing in the moment is maybe less critical than what the act of dancing builds up in your mind first.
That's exactly how the researchers interpret it. They argue that the dancing itself, the moderate physical effort, learning steps, being part of a group, sticking with it all that builds psychological resilience, it acts like a social buffer and a confidence boost. It provides, as they put it, protection and acceptance against life's challenges, whether it's health scares or feeling lonely after kids leave home. Then, this boosted resilience changes how people view their overall situation. It improves their life satisfaction. And then it's this higher life satisfaction, this feeling that, yeah, things are generally okay, that promotes and sustains those positive emotions day to day. So the resilience piece is like the foundation. It's the spark that gets the whole positive chain reaction going.
Right. So you're building mental toughness just by showing up, moving with others, connecting. And that toughness is what translates into lasting positive feelings, not just the temporary buzz from the dance itself. That seems like a really important insight for, well, anyone looking for ways to boost well-being long term. Okay, but here's where it got even more interesting, you hinted. Because not every logical sounding path actually worked in their model. You said the three-step chain was strong, but one specific path, one that seems kind of obvious, actually didn't show a significant effect. That was the path where square dancing directly boosts life satisfaction, which then leads to positive effect. Why wouldn't that work?
Exactly. This is that intriguing detour we talked about. You'd naturally think, okay, I enjoy dancing. It makes me feel good about my life overall, and therefore I feel more positive emotions. Simple, right? But the statistical model just didn't support that direct link between the activity itself and life satisfaction as a strong mediator leading to positive affect. It was surprisingly weak in that specific role. Which, yeah, raises a really interesting question. If the dancing is so beneficial, why didn't the simple enjoyment of Guangchang Wu directly translate into higher life satisfaction within this mediation model?
Wait, I have to push back a bit there. That does seem counterintuitive. Why wouldn't showing up, dancing, laughing with friends, getting outside, why wouldn't that directly make you more satisfied with life?
Well, the researchers had a pretty grounded explanation. They suggest that life satisfaction as a psychological variable is just really complex. It's heavily influenced by some big, potentially uncontrollable external factors. Think about the major life challenges this age group might face. Serious money worries, maybe chronic health problems, difficult family dynamics that have been going on for years. Square dancing can definitely lift your mood for an hour or two, but it can't magically fix a low bank balance or cure arthritis. So these other powerful factors might have a much stronger, more direct impact on how someone evaluates their entire life. And that's why the resilience piece becomes so vital in the chain. The dance works its magic because it gives them the mental strength, the coping skills to deal with those big life problems, even if it doesn't make the problems vanish.
Ah, okay, that clicks. It's an effective coping tool, not necessarily a direct fix for life's biggest hurdles. That makes a lot more sense. So shifting focus then, practically speaking, why is square dancing, this particular activity, such a perfect way to deliver that mental resilience boost? Why not, I don't know, just taking up knitting or going for a run alone?
It really seems to be the combination, the synergy of everything it offers. It bundles several known mental health boosters into one package that's easy for people to access. So first, yeah, you've got the straightforward benefits of physical exercise. We know moving your body releases brain chemicals that improve mood and thinking. That's basic. Second, you add the powerful effect of music and art. Moving rhythmically to music, it triggers endorphins, dopamine. It just directly lifts mood in a way that, say, solitary jogging might not always do.
And the cultural context is huge too, right? We're not talking about a small class. Sometimes it's hundreds of women moving together in public squares, often late at night with this super loud music. It's a whole scene, a real commitment.
Exactly. Which brings us to the third factor, which is probably critical for this group: intense social interaction. This is absolutely not a solo activity. It demands coordination, a shared identity with the group, showing up for others. It directly tackles that loneliness issue, the empty nest feeling, by building a sense of belonging, a community structure. Kind of gives them the new role, maybe replacing the caregiver role with group member.
And then finally, don't forget the environment. Gronchanggu happens outside, usually in parks, green spaces. And there's research showing that for older adults especially, just being in nature has restorative effects. It lowers stress. So it's a whole
Right.
package. Moving, music, community, and nature, all wrapped up together.
So, bringing it all together, what's the key takeaway here for you, the listener, thinking about aging populations, maybe even yourself? This study really gives us a valuable model, a potential recipe for boosting positive emotions in older adults. And the prescription seems pretty clear. It's about encouraging activities that are community focused, regular, enjoyable, yes, but that crucially prioritize building resilience, not just burning calories. It's almost like building a psychological fortress through, well, collective movement and commitment.
There's definitely a strong foundation, yeah. But we do need to remember the study's limits. It was cross-sectional, just one snapshot in time. To really nail down cause and effect over the long haul, you need longitudinal studies, tracking people for years. And also, these findings are specifically about middle-aged and elderly women in China, where this dance is, like, everywhere culturally. We need more research to see if the exact same chain reaction happens for, say, men or younger people, or in places where square dancing isn't a thing.
For sure. Important caveats. But the theoretical insight is still huge, isn't it? It strongly argues for these non-drug social approaches. And here's a final thought to chew on, something the researchers themselves suggested for the future, which kind of takes this whole idea up another level. Could square dancing be doing more than just psychological good? They actually recommend looking at it through the lens of brain neuroscience, specifically investigating how it might affect the actual structure and connections in different brain regions.
Right, so basically is all that rhythmic coordination, the memory involved in learning steps, the constant social feedback, is it actually changing the brain physically? Could this common cultural activity actually be a form of, like, neurological intervention? It might just be the most fun way to boost neuroplasticity anyone's discovered yet.